Yes, sir.
Yep. What's up, Dolphins fans? Chris Perkins, your Sun Sentinel Dolphins columnist here. That's David Furones, your Sun Sentinel Dolphins beat writer. We've come to the end of the season. The Dolphins season ended Sunday with a riveting, can I say riveting, 34-31 wild card loss to Buffalo. Hey, I thought the Dolphins played pretty well in that game considering. It was a successful season overall because the Dolphins made the playoffs, right? But we're going to take a little time now to look back at the regular season, look ahead to the offseason, and then contemplate some of the coaching changes that could happen. Regarding those coaching changes, you guys know the two names that we're watching. Defensive coordinator Josh Boyer, special teams coach Danny Crossman. Unsure on possible replacements, but to me, the natural first place to look is people from Mike McDaniel's past. We know that Vic Fangio is a name that was out there for defensive coordinator because he talked to the Dolphins last year. We'll kind of discuss what we think is going on as far as that. Regarding the offseason, the Dolphins 2023 draft, it involves a second-round pick, 2 third-round picks, a 6th-round pick, and a 7th-round pick. Also, they're currently over the cap, but don't worry about that. Room can be created. And, of course, I think this is the longest that we've gone in this show without mentioning the name Tua Tagovailoa. The Dolphins have that situation to deal with. They have dealt with it in a way. Yesterday, they said they feel confident Tua isn't at more risk for another concussion because of his concussion history. And they said Tua is going to be the starter next season. A lot to discuss. Let's dive in. So, Furones, you were there yesterday. Dolphins general manager Chris Grier and coach Mike McDaniel spoke about Tua. Before we get into that clip, what do you think is the best way for the Dolphins to approach the Tua situation? Should he enter the season as the starter? Should they look for a veteran? I'll just throw the name Tom Brady out there, although I don't know if that's realistic. Should they make Tua compete for the starting job? How do you view things right now?
Perk, did you watch the Monday night game? You're going to say Tom Brady? Did you watch what happened on Wild Card Weekend? But I think they're handling it right with Tua. Naturally, I think giving him the 4th year and final year on that rookie contract is the right way to go. And, hey, everyone talked about this make or break year for Tua going into year 3. And for the most part, outside of just being available and remaining healthy and these concussions that occurred, then he did deliver. He led the NFL in passer rating, led the NFL in yards per attempt, and really handled himself well in a new offense and learned a lot from Mike McDaniel's scheme, developed under quarterbacks coach Darrell Bevell. So when Tua was on the field, outside of a few games where he really underperformed, then for the most part, he had a positive outcome to the 2022 season. And just the biggest question remains, it became and remains now because it has been a question for these past 3 years and going back to his college years, is if he can remain healthy. And so that'll be the big thing. That's why so many questions to Grier and McDaniel were about Tua and dealing with the concussions and coming back. And but naturally, yes, I would have given him this 4th year for sure. The bigger question now becomes if you grant him that 5th year option that you have to decide on by May 1st. So do you commit to that $22 million figure for 2024 as you have to do that this year, or do you want to remain flexible going into next year? And depending on what happens, you can either franchise him or then determine that you want to sign him for an extension. And Grier said everything's on the table. So, I think that part is handled correctly. Yes, I would give him this year, and also with the salary cap where it is, and just the development that we saw, I want to see Tua under this offense in the 2nd year, continue to develop and get another shot at it going forward.
Yeah, I agree with you, Furones. And look, at the start of the season, it was well documented that I had questions about Tua because people on Twitter helped me document my doubts about him throwing deep and about him making good decisions. And to me, Tua answered both of those questions. But now you have the question of his health regarding concussions, not even regarding like the finger injuries and things that he's had in the past. This is mostly a concussion thing. Let's hear what Chris Grier and Mike McDaniel had to say yesterday in the season-ending press conference when the question was posed regarding Tua and whether he might be more susceptible to concussions because he has had a few concussions in the past.
This is for either you with concussions. Again, I'm a few credits short of my MD, but what I've read is that you have a couple you might be susceptible of getting more easily. Is that a concern with Tua, and what confidence do you have that this won't be a recurring issue for him?
Well, I think from what our doctors and the consultants we've talked to through the NFLPA, that is not a true statement. So for us, I don't think he's any more prone than anyone else. So for us, we're just going through and letting the doctors and the medical staff and the people in the in that field, like you said, that know a lot more. But from everything we've been told, that is not a concern.
All right, and so, kind of a lot to digest there from a statement that wasn't very long. Good question asked by our friend Adam Beasley of Pro Football Network there. But, Furones, I think right when you start out with what Chris Grier said, when he says, I think from what our doctors and consultants we've talked through the NFLPA, that's not a true statement, meaning Tua is not more susceptible to concussions now that he's had a few. For me, now look, I trust the Dolphins and I trust that they're going to do the best thing for Tua. Okay, and so I've seen a couple of things here. That he is more susceptible, that he is not more susceptible. Probably the thing that grabbed me more than anything was that the Dolphins seemed pretty dug in, Chris Grier ending it with, but from everything we've been told, that is not a concern. Them being so dug in at this stage is what concerns me, but I do think that they have Tua's, best interest at heart, but you're so dug into this position. I keep using that term. That troubles me. Be a little more open-minded because you have more time. But what do you think of the Dolphins being convicted and moving forward, Furones?
Right. I think I was surprised that Chris Grier expressed that with such conviction. He felt very certain about it. And a lot of doctors would disagree. Listen, I'm no medical expert. I'm not going to say whether it's one way or another. I asked this question myself, and I don't know the answer to it. And honestly, it seems like a lot of doctors differ in their opinions on this. So I don't think even the most medical professionals, they haven't reached a consensus on this. So the ones that are working with Tua, from what the Dolphins are telling us, and with a lot of conviction, again, are saying that is not a concern. You are not more susceptible to suffering concussions just because you have now a concussion history, quote unquote, if you will, which now Tua kind of falls into that category with 2 diagnosed concussions and a 3rd instance of a blow to the head. So just a lot of head trauma for one season, 4 months in total there that we're talking about of these 3 instances. And now Mike McDaniel did specify that these are the doctors that are working with him directly and individually, not generalization, because we've also looked up information from, according to the American Association of Neurological Surgeons, they say that the risk for concussions in football players is 3 to 6 times higher for players who have had a previous concussion. Now, that might be the more generalization that McDaniel is alluding to, as opposed to these are doctors that are working directly with Tua and maybe deciding he's just had these instances occur just by whatever likelihood that hasn't worked his way and maybe been unfortunate. But there are cases of the opposite too, where we look at Jalen Phillips. In the draft process, I remember talking with a lot of fans. I wasn't on the beat yet, but I was covering the University of Miami, the Miami Hurricanes, when Phillips had that standout season as a defensive end in 2020, and a lot of people in Miami were concerned about, okay, well, his injury history, and he's had multiple concussions, throwing out terms like concussion prone. And I remember back then I wasn't so certain that that was really a thing, but he has not had another one since. So we're talking about 4 years after he had multiple concussions at UCLA. So he took a year off in 2019 for the transfer and that momentary retirement, then worked his way back up, had that tremendous 2020 season with the Hurricanes, got through it healthy, has gone through 2 NFL seasons completely healthy. Jalen Phillips even tweeted out a fact that he has now played more NFL games than he did college games, and just 2 seasons in the NFL. So there's an example of someone that once was deemed concussion prone or whatever, concussion history, and we haven't had that pop back up since. So there is precedence for overcoming it and not really having it become an issue later. That's just one anecdotal piece of evidence. So as opposed to some statistics that probably have very large sample size, but on the other hand, again, are kind of that generalization that I think McDaniel was alluding to instead of the doctors that are working directly with him. So I'm not going to be very definitive one way or the other. They're speaking to medical experts. I'm not one myself, but it is just interesting that they express it with such conviction.
Wait a minute, you're not a medical expert? Let's know you're not?
Oh, you didn't know?
No.
I'm not a football expert either. I'm just some hack that's on this show. They let anyone on this show with you, Perk.
That's right. We're desperate. We're desperate here. No, you are a football expert. The medical thing, that's breaking news, though. I did not know that. I'm not either, by the way. So yeah. Look. The fans, though, obviously this is a huge concern with Tua and his health moving forward and how the organization is going to progress. We go out to Twitter and again, thank everybody for submitting the questions when requested. And man, again, I should really look at these Twitter handles before I post these questions. This, I believe, is from Delgado G. Or Delgado G12, I believe. But anyway,
at least it wasn't something inappropriate, Perk.
I know, right?
You scared me when you started saying that.
I know, me butchering the names is inappropriate. Look, he's got his question is really, he's got a couple of helmets on here. Can we combine these into one piece of equipment for Tua? Seriously, I've seen the use of Guardian caps in practices, and the Dolphins spoke about Tua's helmet being one of the safer helmets in the NFL. And then we've got this one from, is this Joey 9 or Joe I9? I'm terrible at this. I should really do some more research before I read these. Anyway, how about Baker Mayfield as the backup quarterback? So, Furones, let's take both of these. The equipment for Tua. Chris Greer did say that Tua wears one of the 2 or 3 best helmets in the NFL. And Mike McDaniel mentioned yesterday that he kind of likened this to a situation where you have to teach a quarterback how to slide. So they're working right from the physical and the equipment standpoint with Tua. And look, it's in their best interest to get Tua the best training as far as knowing, how to fall or how to take a hit if that's even possible, and the best equipment. So, the Dolphins want Tua to be healthy, and from his personal standpoint and from the organizational standpoint. So I think if there's better equipment available, the Dolphins will pursue that. What are your thought, just from an equipment and Tua standpoint, and then we'll talk about Baker Mayfield or whoever as a backup. But the equipment?
Sure. If it's one of the top 2 or 3 helmets, then let's get him that top 1 helmet. What's the number 1 helmet?
You are a medical expert.
Yeah, and I don't know if that helmet, I don't know which helmet that is, if that affects quarterback play and vision, maybe it's uncomfortable. That's a big deal for any player, but really a quarterback, you got to be comfortable with what you're wearing on your head in order to play the position effectively. But now this head trauma is coming to the forefront as far as concerns for Tua. So yeah, you want to get him the safest equipment, and if it's now, these weren't instances in all these cases where it happened where he should have been sliding per se, but yeah, if you do get him to slide more, then you can minimize the risk going forward. I know even though he didn't suffer any of the concussions on plays where he's scrambling, he still sometimes has a tendency to try to fight for an extra yard when it's like you're 4 yards away from the first down marker. You just set up a 3rd and 3 instead of 3rd and 4. That one is not worth putting your head on the line for what arguably none of them are when you've had what Tua has had. So these issues have come to the forefront. Maybe it's a different helmet that he needs, but definitely take this offseason to really analyze all aspects of that. If he has to train himself on how to brace himself for certain hits, which it kind of affects quarterback play too. If you're thinking about that while you're trying to read a defense and keep a feel for the pass rush, it does seem to be a lot of things to be monitoring at the same time. But these are legitimate concerns.
Yeah, they are. And speaking of how to fall, I don't know if you would ever recommend that a quarterback stick his hand out to brace your fall. I think people do that naturally anyway, but I don't know if that's a healthy way for a quarterback to approach it. But that's better than hitting your head.
Because you do want him following through. You always say, he stands in the pocket, takes the hit, follows through on his throw. Your throws are going to be affected if you're bracing yourself in that way.
Right. So Joe I-9, it's got to be Joe I-9 because it's Joe Inazelli. So I've now butchered his Twitter handle and his name. But how about a backup quarterback? And Joe mentions Baker Mayfield, but the grand scheme of things, a veteran backup, a Teddy Bridgewater. Here's one thing, though, Furones, and you tell me what you think about this. Would you want to bring in a veteran backup who probably still has designs on being a starter? And Baker Mayfield might or might not be one of those guys. But do you want to bring in a veteran or a backup quarterback who, I know that I would go to Baker with some questions and do a couple of columns on him because he's a well-known guy. Not asking him, hey, Baker, do you think you should start over Tua? But just talking to him and getting his voice and getting his opinion because he's an experienced starter, somebody who can talk to you about things like that. I would have done that more with Teddy Bridgewater, but Teddy was hurt for part of the season. And then everybody else was always talking to Teddy. Teddy's such a friendly guy. And you guys have known Teddy since high school, so everybody was always around Teddy anyway. But
I wasn't covering yet, but some others were.
Okay, yeah, all right. So you're not 45 years old. So but anyway, your whole thought about the other quarterback, because we know that Tua is going to be here, but is Skyler a candidate for number 2? Do you want a popular guy as the number 2? Would you bring Teddy back? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways you can go, and you asked the question, Perk, yesterday, which was a good one to Mike and Chris, Mike McDaniel and Chris Greer, which was, do you believe now Skyler Thompson can elevate himself to be that number 2 quarterback and be that primary backup, and backing up a quarterback that hasn't gotten through a season healthy in the NFL? So the backup quarterback is an important position for the Dolphins with Tua Tagovailoa as the starter, because what I just said, he hasn't gotten through a season healthy and missed 5 games in total this year, and same 4 games last year through a regular season. So we go back to college with his hip injury, so you need a good backup. Skyler Thompson, if you would have asked me before the Buffalo Bills game, I would have said, definitely no, he needs to be a number 3 quarterback. You need a veteran backup. He didn't play a great game by any means, but at the end of the day, he hung in there as a 2-touchdown underdog on the road, hostile environment against a really good football team in the Buffalo Bills. Granted, assisted a lot by his defense that set them up in great field position. They ended up with field goals off some of the great field positions, so the offense didn't really make too much happen with it. But then he did get that touchdown to tie it to Mike Gesicki, then the 2-point conversion. After not sustaining a drive all game, then he did have that, was it a 75-yard drive that was capped by the Jeff Wilson touchdown, got them back within 3, and that was ultimately the final. But Yeah, so he did show some things. He obviously made his mistakes. That 3rd and 19 backed up, should have never been thrown, and that was a costly turnover. Another one earlier where he just didn't read Dean Marlowe underneath, and then he got picked off on that. Also didn't place the ball well because there was a lot of distance between Marlowe and I think Tyreek Hill was the intended receiver on that play. So obviously some mistakes, but I mean, he handled himself kind of okay. But for a backup quarterback, a third-string rookie, to go into that environment. So he might be making a case for himself with another year of development. Maybe not ready yet, but he could get to that level. And a big thing is if Darrell Bevell will still be around, because he's a great quarterback developer. He's worked with some of the best. We're talking about like Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Matthew Stafford, Trevor Lawrence, Brett Favre going back early in his career. Now Tua, and we saw what Tua did under his guidance, Darrell Bevell's guidance this past season. So I think that would pay dividends to have another offseason for him. But you could go the route of just keep standing pat with a veteran backup quarterback, and then Skylar Thompson still is your number 3 and a viable number 3. Then if he is, maybe a lot of fans don't want Teddy Bridgewater back after he couldn't get through either of his games, but there were kind of freak instances where, all right, he tried to make a play on a guy that was going for a pick six, and he really messed up his finger. I mean, he had a lot of inflammation on it. It was bent the wrong way. It's really hard to throw a football after that. So that was kind of a freak instance. And then the first time he got to start, deemed out due to concussion protocol after one play, and that was a week when everything was heightened in the NFL, very vigilant with what happened to Tua in the previous game, and the NFL the day before announcing its protocol updates. So it was just kind of a heightened awareness, and he kind of was the first victim of it going out on the first play of that game at MetLife Stadium. So I don't think just because of those two instances, it means that he can't remain healthy. If he had to go in as a backup, I would feel comfortable with him. I think Teddy likes being in Miami. We know he wants to be the future head coach of his high school alma mater, Miami Northwestern. He likes being around there. So I could be okay with bringing him back. I know there's a lot of other names like a Baker Mayfield. I don't know if a Sam Darnold. Hey, Jimmy Garoppolo's potentially out there, but would he want to come into a backup quarterback scenario in another situation? Maybe he could with Mike McDaniel. So Jacoby Brissett. Hey, Geno Smith, but he was a Pro Bowler in Seattle. I think they might want to do something with that.
Right, exactly. And look, Furones, let's say this also about Skylar, that last game, the rookie quarterback, but also the rookie head coach, making his playoff debut, and we saw, some clock management issues. So, Skylar was dealing with more than himself being a rookie in a hostile environment. There were injury issues, which, yes, everybody deals with that, but also some, a rookie head coach and some issues there. And look, and I know a lot of people want to, say, Brock Purdy, Skylar should be doing better. Look at what Brock Purdy is doing. Look, Brock Purdy has a whole different set of circumstances, right? With George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel and the coaching and the defense and the special teams. Like that, this is not all Brock Purdy. Now, Brock Purdy has balled. He's done a great job, take nothing away. But Brock Purdy wouldn't have to. Skylar Thompson would have to carry more than Brock Purdy has to carry. I'll just say that. So, that's pointing out something in Skylar's favor. Skylar, he was on an island in a sense. So on an island that Brock Purdy is not. So I wouldn't have a problem bringing back Teddy Bridgewater and Skylar. You could even let them battle it out for number 2. But look, you've got Skylar in-house, and he's a cheap quarterback, a 7th-round pick as opposed to a first-round pick. So I would give him a shot at number 2, if it were up to me. But if they want to bring in a veteran, I'm good with that also. But I wouldn't have a problem running it back the way it is. All right,
basically, you look at the salary cap too, because Teddy Bridgewater cost you $6.5 million. If Skylar Thompson, at his price, which you're already going to be paying anyway, can be a viable backup. Hey, can you spend that money elsewhere? That's also something to consider.
Right, exactly. All right, Furones, let's roll on to our next segment. And here we're going to ask, was 2022 a success, and what should we expect in 2023? Now, I think that pretty much everybody would agree that 2022 was a success, right? You had your ups and downs, the win streaks, the injuries, and all that. But look, you made the playoffs for the first time since 2016 and made the playoffs with a rookie head coach, a lot of key players on this team for the first time. First-year players, guys such as Tyreek Hill and Teron Armstead. This was their first year with the Dolphins. Tyreek establishes the franchise record for receptions and yards. Teron Armstead makes the Pro Bowl. Tyreek Hill, also Pro Bowl. Tyreek, All-Pro. And so that highlights the contributions of two key acquisitions. So the draft picks, they didn't do a whole lot. Skylar Thompson, your 7th round pick, was the most productive draft pick. But yes, definitely 2022 was a success, right? Would you agree with that?
No, I don't know if everyone would say the same thing as you, Perk, because remember when this team was 8-3, then if you ask someone at that point, would ending 9-9 with a 5-game losing streak, squeaking into the playoffs, and then losing in the wild card round, would that be considered a success? I think a lot of people, a lot of fans probably wouldn't say so. But yeah, that's the difference in perspective when you ask it. Hey, before the season, if you say, hey, get into the playoffs, wild card round, and then lose on the road to one of the Super Bowl favorites, hey, that's what I thought this team was going to be. Now, I did predict 10-7 in the regular season to get there, so off by 1. And then, there's still wild card team, which in a division with the Buffalo Bills in it, it's going to be very difficult to win the division. So I think that's kind of a team that the Dolphins have to be eyeing for and maybe building to beat. And they're kind of designed to beat with them because we've seen how well they've competed against them, winning the first game at home. When everyone thought second game in Buffalo in that lake effect snow warning, which it didn't really come around until the fourth quarter, but still a cold environment. They hadn't really played in the cold yet to that point and competed with them, only lost by a last-second field goal. And then all odds against them just this past Sunday, 25-degree weather, rookie third-string quarterback, all these other injuries, 3 different offensive linemen that are out of position or elevated to a starting position. One of them off the practice squad, elevated just the day before. Then that was kind of a success to stay with the Bills and compete the way you did in that game. So overall, sure, it depends on your perspective. I think they ended up where I thought they would, one of the wild card teams. I would have hoped maybe they were the 5 or the 6 instead of squeaking in as a 7 and needing to get in the way they did, just surviving an 11-6 very ugly game against the Jets, who also were depleted, and not even scoring a touchdown and just winning with field goals and a safety at the end just to get in, and then needing help as well. Just to make it after a 5-game losing streak that deep in the season. But the team also did deal with a lot of adversity, a lot of injuries, which also is a byproduct of having a lot of players on the roster with injury history. So they fought through it. Teron Armstead fought through injury and played. I mean, he could have had surgery week 1, and then that big offseason signing could have been just kaput just right then with that toe injury. But he fought through injuries to 4 body parts. He never really had Xavier Howard be himself. You lost Emmanuel Ogbah, Nick Needham, Brandon Jones to season-ending injuries, and that had a lot to do with the defense's shortcomings. And Byron Jones, you never had on physically unable to perform list due to that lower left leg surgery. So there were a lot of factors, and then a lot of reasons why you could feel optimistic that a lot of these pieces could come together in the future, especially if they remain healthy.
Furones, you know what caught my ear? You said they finished 9-9. Now, in my book, they've had 3 consecutive winning seasons. Explain yourself. Come on, Furones, 9-8, right?
9-8 regular season, but then you finished 9-9. So it is. Yeah, now it's a playoff game, so right. You're not going to penalize this team compared to last year's 9-8 team, which was 1-7 at one point, and then they did have to get to 9-8 with that final game, and they were already eliminated anyway. But yeah, sure. I would still say winning regular season, 3 straight winning regular seasons.
There you go.
They did finish 500. I mean, the 07 Patriots, they finished 18-1. They didn't go undefeated 16-0. They finished 18-1. They lost in the Super Bowl. So you still got to count the playoff games and the record.
All right, good point, man. I'm giving them 3 straight winning seasons. That's a good point. The Patriots, but yeah. All right, and the 72 Dolphins, right? They were 17-0, not 14-0,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So yeah, all right. To your point. All right, let's go out to Twitter. Well done, Furones. Let's go out to Twitter here. We're going out to a question as we look ahead here. Timsky22. Does anyone besides Greer evaluate the scouting department? Why is our offensive line such a mess with so many resources put into it? Why does our franchise continue to put themselves in unfriendly cap situations and dead money? That's a lot, but we're really talking about the plan moving forward and what you want to see. And so listen, and what should we expect in 2023 really is kind of part of that thing. The Chris Greer thing, there's a lot of people who are asking about, why does he still have a job, blah, blah, blah. Can we end the Chris Greer rage or put it on pause for a little bit? Chris Greer is going to be here next season. Steve Ross likes him, and he just got his team to the playoffs. So, I understand that there's a past here, and, some people are still holding the 2020 draft against him with Austin Jackson and Noah Igbenogany. I get all that, but can we put that on pause and look ahead? Because all of that negativity, I know that's part of the history of Chris Greer, and you can't deny it, you can't ignore it, but it's really not relevant right now as we move forward. I guess, history is an indicator of future behavior, but let's give this guy another chance. I know that, I'm not on the Greer bandwagon as much as I'm on the Josh Boyer bandwagon. Y'all know I roll with this defense, but I just, the kind of the shaking your fist at the heavens about why do we have Chris Greer? It's irrelevant. It's not going to change in the next 10 months or 9 months or whatever. So that's all I have to say about that. But you do have to ask yourself why they're in these situations, but more importantly, you ask yourself, how do they get out of these situations? How do they manage their way around them? And that's what I want to start from right now. We know that they're over the cap and blah, 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 and they've got the Byron Jones situation, but how do they manage that moving forward? And here's what I would say about what to expect for next season. The Dolphins need to win a playoff game in 2023. You made the playoffs this year, and, I'll go back to that they have opened up this 2 or 3 year championship window because they have acquired Tyreek Hill and Teron Armstead and Bradley Chubb, and they've given up first round picks to get those guys. So any improvement to me starts with Mike McDaniel, and his play calling and his game management were clear signs that he was a rookie head coach. But you can improve on that. Just like, Tua can get better and Skyler can get better and Xavier, everybody is expected to improve. And that includes Mike McDaniel. That includes Chris Greer. So the biggest thing is you need to win a playoff game in 2023. That's what I expect from this team. How they get there, we're going to discuss in specifics next segment. But that's what I'm expecting from 2023. Make an improvement, win a playoff game.
Sure, I'm with that. And also when it comes to the Chris Greer hate, it's like, make up your mind. First, you were criticizing him over the draft picks. Then he trades some draft picks to get some established players on here. And now you criticize him over not having draft picks anymore. Well, you didn't like what he was doing in the draft in a lot of cases. And then now you don't like that you have established players due to trading away those picks. Hey, this roster was rather stacked. It's a very talented roster when you add a Tyreek Hill, a player of that caliber. It was a team that was already back-to-back winning seasons, although just on the cusp, missing the playoffs. And then you add a player like Tyreek Hill. They got Teron Armstead, who, although he battled injuries and missed some time, then he was a Pro Bowl talent for what did it end up being, 14 games total. Yeah, he ended up just about what you would expect, because you do know he's going to miss some time, but the roster overall really improved. So that's a tribute to Chris Greer. Now, Bradley Chubb, you want to get more out of him in this upcoming season. I think another year with the Dolphins could help him and Jalen Phillips on opposite ends. Now, that was your other first-round pick. Of course, you did lose one due to the tampering findings, and then along with the tanking allegations that were not found to be true by the NFL. So you had the 2 first-round picks. Now you have none, trading away one and then getting the other one docked. That's also part of the reason from segment 1. Hey, you had that draft capital if you wanted to make a quarterback move. But that's another reason kind of why it is beneficial that you did have the season you had from Tua, and you could feel comfortable moving forward, especially since you don't have those kind of assets to make another move if you were to want to do that. And as far as team expectations, or we mentioned offensive line, hey, the draft picks of Liam Eichenberg, Austin Jackson, those are still ones that we're looking at with a critical eye. Austin Jackson couldn't make it through a game healthy each time he stepped on the field. Then he ended up with an injury that put him back on injured reserve. So that was a little bit tough to see. And then Liam Eichenberg, I know they liked the direction he was going right before he had that knee injury that cost him some time. He struggled early, but then was getting it going. That knee injury set him back, and then he was unable to go in the playoff game due to the arm injury in the regular season finale. So injuries also depleting that group. But, hey, they also made the draft pick of Robert Hunt, who has looked just fine there. They added Connor Williams at center, who was a great addition in his first year, moving from guard to center. Teron Armstead gave you a lot at left tackle, although he missed some time. But, I mean, that's a Pro Bowl caliber player every time you have him available on the field. So, yeah, there were some improvements to the line that still has to come together now because it still did rank very low in terms of the entire NFL. Going forward, I'm with you on that. Now, take that next step. You squeaked into the playoffs with a lot of things going against you regarding injuries. Maybe if you can flip some of that luck back your way with keeping guys healthy, make some improvements, adjustments to the roster. We're going to talk about some of the areas where we want to see those improvements made. But then get yourself to that next level, whether it's getting to the point of a top wild card if you can't get over the Bills in the regular season yet, and then putting yourself in position where you can advance in the playoffs and get to a divisional round. That would be what I'm now deeming a success going into the 2023 season.
And Furones, let me ask you real quick about Mike McDaniel, because, again, he needs to improve, right? And that's not a criticism, or that's not ripping Mike McDaniel, but here's a guy who didn't run the ball, who couldn't adjust offensively after the 49ers figured him out, and the play calling and the game management, there was room for growth. So he's got to improve. And again, he was a rookie head coach. This is not ripping Mike McDaniel. This is saying he needs to improve, just like you would say, Cater Cole who needs to improve or whatever. He had a great year. It's not ripping Cater to say he needs to be better next year. He had a really good year, but Mike McDaniel, he had a good year. He needs to improve next year. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and when you asked him the question, what he felt he learned this season, what did he do? He looked at his watch like, I could go on for a long time talking about this. Right. We might be in a time crunch, which may also have been subconsciously symbolic. He looked at his watch, a clock.
I see what you did.
Manage the clock a little bit better when it comes to play clock situations, getting the play in. Now, in that game against Buffalo, because it wasn't – there were some scattered instances where it was an issue, and game management, whether it be managing the clock, game scenarios, late first half scenarios, challenging plays up until that regular season finale when he finally got one. Then he was on a string of – it was 0 for 5 at that point, and he had multiple instances of plays that he could have gotten reversed that the NFL has confirmed would have been reverse calls that were not challenged. So whatever system he has in place there, he might have to take a look at just to have a smoother system that can get the information to him, because it's probably not all on him. And I don't want to place all the blame on whoever it is in a booth, but something has to be streamlined better to get him the information in a timely manner so he can make challenges. And then as far as getting those play calls in, he's got this very innovative offense. He's always creative. He's got a lot of motion, pre-snap motion in the run game. He's got all these complex. It's a complex offense and scheme, and he's got all these things he's trying to get into the play call. And sometimes you're running out of time and you're trying to come up with the perfect play call instead of what you need just in the scenario. So he's got to get that shored up for sure. We saw just at the worst time, 4th and 1, you're taking too long to come up with the big play, come up with the perfect play instead of just get yourself the first down yardage. Really what was a 4th and inches scenario. So that proved costly there. So, he's going to have to take an introspective look at himself as well after a rookie head coaching season. But he's got so much potential. He is this offensive whiz. So I do have a lot of confidence in him. Those game management situations, I know he's looking at himself in the mirror for sure and detailing how he can fix those shortcommings.
Yeah, and getting the plays in, that wasn't just a problem last week. That happened when Teddy Bridgewater was quarterbacking, and Teron Armstead made reference to it post-game in the locker room after the wild card game, saying that he thinks that's something that has to be prioritized for next season. He wasn't taking a shot at anybody. He was just speaking factually. So that puts a bow on that. Furones, our final segment here, and this deals with here's how the Dolphins build a better team in 2023. And we're going to go out to Twitter to start off building the better team in 2023. And a question that everybody is asking, this one comes to us from Tua Man 23. When do you think Boyer and Crossman will be fired? Any names for their replacements? I think coaching changes will probably happen within the next couple of weeks. I think that when you make a coaching change, you better have a pretty good idea of who the replacement is going to be and is that person attainable. And so if that person wants a different job description than you're willing to offer, if that person wants too much money, if that person can't get out of their current situation or doesn't want to get out of their current employment situation, all of that stuff has to be considered. So, in other words, let me make this clear. Before Josh Boyer gets fired, if he gets fired, I would think the Dolphins have reached out through back channels to 2 or 3 other people, at least one other person, and said, hey, if such and such happens, are you available to come here? Are you interested, et cetera, et cetera? So having said that, yes, they've got to decide when you're talking about building a better team in 2023, and we're talking about the coaching staff right now, they've got to decide what's going to happen with Josh Boyer and Danny Crossman. And look, Crossman, he's probably gone. We should point out that the special teams concerns were affected by injuries, right? So when guys like Nick Needham and Brandon Jones get injured, special team specialists like Keon Crossan and Justin Bethel and Clayton Fedulum have to play from scrimmage, and that reduces their amount of times in special teams. So the injury thing did affect Danny Crossman. That's not an excuse. That's an explanation a partial explanation of what went on with special teams. So these coaching changes, look, and we'll just talk. Let's just talk about Crossman for a second. Do you think he comes back?
Well, first of all, I love how a lot of these fans make these assumed questions, like they already are going with the assumption. Okay, so they ask, when do you think he's going to fire? Oh, so yeah, we're already assuming he's fired. We already fired him. We already did that part. Yeah, Thursday. That's the day. That's when it's scheduled. So, and I think if you ask a lot of people, and myself included, a few weeks back, then yeah. We already had Boyer gone as defensive coordinator. You felt there was no way he could come back, especially that stretch of games leading into, when you had first a losing streak, but then there were also a lot of games earlier where the offense had to win in some shootouts, even against some subpar competition, and the defense was not having its way. But when I asked the Mike McDaniel and both of them really, and Mike McDaniel went ahead and answered yesterday for Josh Boyer, then he came away very pleased with the way they finished the season. So I don't know. Could Boyer have saved himself when the defense did force 3 turnovers, had 7 sacks, and scored on one of them against the high-powered Buffalo Bills offense, in which Josh Allen has kind of been a little turnover prone this season and played a little loose with the ball. We see him carrying it like a loaf of bread and making some ill-timed decisions, and the Dolphins took advantage of that. But if you look at the season as a whole, the Dolphins weren't opportunistic in a lot of scenarios where we saw the previous 2 seasons when Josh Boyer did have Brian Flores and he could lean on him. The defense was very aggressive and successful with its blitz rate and also getting pressure when it just rushed with its front four and able to leave its corners on islands, and a lot of those things either weren't available to him this season or just didn't work out. Poorly timed blitzes that the offense just knew, whether it's because of studying tendencies that they could take advantage and was ready for it to come in certain cases. And but what I will give Boyer credit for is a lot of cases where he was out schemed to start. He did make in-game adjustments. There were several times, this game included. So X was getting burned by Stephon Diggs early and then made some adjustments. Dialed up different packages in order to pressure Allen later in the game, got those 7 sacks, a lot of pressure, wreaked a lot of havoc. So there were other games like Detroit when they couldn't get a stop in the first half, and then suddenly they shut them down in the second half. Chicago late in that game, trying to defend Justin Fields, which was a mess throughout, and then got the late stops, some of it due to what the Bears did. And those teams weren't playing very well at that time. But others, the first game in Buffalo, so the December one that they lost, Dolphins were getting absolutely torched early and then got a few stops, started the second half to get themselves back in that game, ended up just losing by that late field goal. So if you take the whole season, then maybe Boyer is gone, sure. But he did have a late run, keeping the Jets out of the end zone in order to get to the playoffs, forcing all those turnovers against Josh Allen and the Bills that could lead Mike McDaniel to go ahead and see if with another year and if guys are healthy, which was a big reason why the defense did not have its success this season. So I might be maybe 50-50 on it now, whereas opposed to I was definitely leaning toward Boyer will be gone before this final stretch. But McDaniel seemed to kind of hint at that he did come away encouraged with the way the defense finished, at least.
Yeah, and and I'll say this about Boyer that people disagree with me on this, but losing Byron Jones was a huge blow to the defense, and I've somewhat equated it. I've somewhat equated it to the offense losing Jalen Waddle, and you tell the offense, all right, go do what you do, and because Byron Jones was such a huge part of what they did, and once you take him away, you pretty much can't do what you want to do. But that goes back to Josh Boyer. You're the coach. Figure it out. You've got to make an adjustment. So, but I think the defense did a credible job. So that's the coaching thing. And by the way, replacements again. I think you look first at who McDaniel has been with and who has come from maybe that Shanahan tree as far as defensive guys. We know that Vic Fangio was a name out there last year. He has been associated with Sean Payton, and I don't know how strong that tie is or whatever. Sean Payton just got done interviewing with Houston, if I'm not mistaken, and so we'll see what happens there and with Vic Fangio. But I would look at the Mike McDaniel tree initially as far as possible coaching replacements, and that would go for special teams as well. Okay, Furones, the Dolphins need to create some cap space, and there are positions that must be addressed in the off season. I mean, to me, as far as positions, cornerback is a position that needs to be addressed. Right tackle, left guard, backup quarterback, inside linebacker. How do they create some cap space? Gesicki is going to be gone with his $10.9 million, right?
That franchise tag, yeah.
Yeah, mm-hmm. so that'll be a little bit something. But then, Teddy Bridgewater at 6.5, Eric Rowe 5.3, Melvin Ingram $4 million. I would bring all three of those guys back because that's good price. Now Melvin Ingram, he's 33, he's up there in age, but when it comes to reducing salary, Eric Fisher will be gone at $3 million, so you get one, kind of a low-level player there. But are anything that's really obvious right now as far as cost cutting that you see that maybe a group of maybe the over 30s, or is there a group of players that you would look at? John Jenkins is in that over 30s. Thomas Morstead, Raheem Mostert, and Jeff Wilson. Raheem over 30, Jeff. Well, I was just talking running backs there, but your over 30s, Teddy Bridgewater, Eric Rowe, Melvin Ingram, Eric Fisher, who probably shouldn't even count. I shouldn't do that for Eric Fisher, should I? That's very disrespectful. Raheem Mostert, John Jenkins. Are you cutting the majority of those over 30s who seem to be pretty cost effective, by the way?
Right. So, I mean, you value cost effectiveness for sure. Right. And there are releasing players. That's an option, but also converting base salary into signing bonus. Yes. So that's what Dolphins executive Brandon Shore, he'll be doing. And Chris Greer seemed very confident when he spoke yesterday that he will end up with that flexibility. So it doesn't seem to be as much of a concern internally as it is externally. Everyone on the outside saying, well, they're this much over the cap right now. That won't be the figure going forward, because a lot of players look at Tyreek Hill, for example, $16 million base salary next year, 5.1 on the signing bonus. A lot of that base salary can get converted into signing bonus, which then also comes down to owner Stephen Ross going ahead and paying more, so that because that bonus doesn't count against the salary cap, and then you free up that space. You still pay the player, but it's an assigning bonus. And I think we all know Ross is willing and able to spend. So I think from that standpoint, and he wants to build a winner too. So he wants to provide every opportunity. So we do know that. And this is also a specialty of Shore. And a lot of people have said because a lot of teams do this, and that it's almost like the NFL salary cap is just this facade that you just get past, and you do your machinations and maneuvering to just make it work, and you end up with a bunch of money. I mean, I also look at you mentioned a lot of names, but Cedric Wilson with $7 million base salary for a receiver that was expected to be your slot guy and produce as a number 3 option, maybe after what you thought initially would be Gesicki as your number 3 option at tight end, but then having Cedric Wilson as a viable candidate, and he was surpassed by Trent Sherfield. So you're on the hook for $7 million there with him, and for a guy that basically just became your punt returner, and what was until that 50-yard return yesterday, it was an ineffective punt return unit, and there was a lot of talk about, hey, try to get Tyreek Hill in there to return punts in big situations. So it seems like the Dolphins do feel like they will have that flexibility going forward. So what we see right now, the number is $16 million over the cap, whatever the case may be. I think don't be too concerned over that aspect of it.
Yeah. All right. And so positions that must be addressed, and we don't have to get into who they're going to talk to or who they're going to pursue. That's a deeper off-season show. But to me, cornerback, because, again, Xavier Howard is going to be 30, and we'll see if his health returns in the offseason. I think that it will, because all we know that it was groin injuries, and that should heal up with some rest. But, again, if Byron Jones is not coming back, and Nick Needham is coming off of Achilles surgery, you have to address that position. Kader Kohu is there, so that's solid. But you have to address that position, right tackle, a position that you have to address. And, I don't know, if Mike McGlinchey is going to leave San Francisco, or what's our Kelvin Beachum maybe in Arizona. Those guys are expensive, and I don't even know if they're going to leave. So, but right tackle is something that has to be addressed. Left guard is something that has to be addressed. The running back situation is something that has to be addressed. Are you bringing both Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson back? And are you confident in them? Was that more of a play calling thing as opposed to a talent thing? Neither one of them is going to cost you an exorbitant amount of money. Backup quarterback, inside linebacker. Anything that really sticks out to me, a cornerback is with Tua's situation at starting quarterback settled. Corner to me is now your number 1 priority. Your thoughts on priorities or positions that absolutely must be addressed.
Yeah, you got to look into cornerback. Obviously, what are you going to do with Byron Jones? A lot of speculation on if he'll just outright get cut, and it seemed to be a lot of speculation on what really happened behind closed doors. Was it a contract situation? And at least publicly, what the Dolphins said, Chris Greer said yesterday, is he felt it was honest about the lower left leg surgery just not healing the way the recovery, the rehab just not going the way they anticipated. So behind closed doors, who knows what really happened. I'm in no position to speak too much on what it was, but hey, he is on the hook for 13.5 in base salary next year. So that's something that you have to decide on. And then Emmanuel Ogba's trying to come back at $15 million, so that's a big figure as well. After you just signed him to the big deal, the previous offseason, in order to bring him back, it was a 4-year deal. Kind of has an out in the second year, but what are you going to do this year with him? And maybe you hope he just can revert back to what he had provided the previous 2 seasons there. You mentioned inside linebacker. Yeah, you could look for an upgrade. And also just particularly, you need to be better in covering running backs out of the backfield. You need to get that secured, and also being able to defend against scrambling quarterbacks at that position, so that in instances where you do want to assign a spy to a quarterback that can scramble, then you want that available to you. Maybe that's a Channing Tindall if he can develop into that. This is going to be a key offseason for the rookie to see if he can get himself elevated into the point where he can provide more snaps and maybe in certain game plans, be more effective and become available to this defense, elevate himself over the Duke Riley and Sam McGuavin, and get himself on the field defensively, not just the special team snaps. So that'll be a big question, especially if you're trying to compete with the Buffalo Bills. Then you need a guy that can help you spy on a quarterback, because Josh Allen can beat you with his legs. So if you got your focus on them in this division, then you're going to need that going forward. So the offensive line, of course, major concern. You addressed some of it last offseason. Connor Williams was a plus. Teron Armstead, when he's there, he's a plus. And even when he's fighting through injuries, he's still a plus. He's a Pro Bowl player when he's playing and available through 4 injuries to a toe, pectoral, knee, and hip. So that's a lot of his body on the line, and he still gives you a great Pro Bowl effort when he is out there. So and the running back situation, of course. They both ranked very highly in yards per attempt, Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson. So in this scheme, if you will commit more to the run game, maybe going forward, which we didn't see so much from McDaniel, who does have that run game coordinator background from his days in San Francisco before he got to the point of OC, then that might be something you want to look at as well, especially since you can keep them for a good price.
So do you think there will be, let's just say, quote unquote, major overhauls to this team, or kind of a couple of positions will get overhauled, maybe, offensive line, or I wouldn't even say overhaul, major changes to maybe cornerback and offensive line, and everything else kind of stays static? That's kind of what I'm looking at right now, right? Because your defensive line, you're good there. Inside linebacker, you do need to get a little bit more athletic, but the pass rushing guys, you're good there. Your safeties, if Brandon Jones comes back healthy, you're good there. Tight end, we know you're going to look for a blocking tight end more than a receiving tight end, right? Because that's your system. Running back, you don't need a whole lot. The quarterback thing we just talked about. Receiver, you're pretty much okay. So to me, the areas right now that you hit hard are going to be cornerback and offensive line. Everything else probably goes for slight improvement or a touch up. Yeah,
right. Yeah, and it's our linebacker as well, like you mentioned. So I probably see that more so, especially because, although Chris Greer says, yes, we'll have this flexibility, right now it's not there. So there are a lot of maneuvers that need to be made just to get some flexibility. So I would think mostly they're standing pat outside of 1, maybe 2 bigger splash-ish signings or acquisitions, however you can get them, and then maybe some smaller tweaks elsewhere.
Jason Sanders, I think that he's back. I don't have his number in front of me, his contract number. See, but I
thought you were talking about his phone number. What,
That's right.
Get him on the show.
Right.
Let's know what he's got to say.
Exactly. Very nice, Furones. I think that you bring in competition 100%. I think he's probably back. Your thoughts very quickly on Sanders?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of criticism over his misses. All of those were from 50 plus, so they are of the more challenging variety. I know in today's NFL, those are an expectation as well, but hey, he also did hit them when it mattered at the end to get you into the playoffs. And a little bit streaky, Jason Sanders was, because he did have some extended streaks where he went without a miss. So I could see it in the end, but maybe they do if they look at the whole season. And if a change at special teams coordinator is made, because we know Danny Crossman, he struggled with his unit this year, then maybe a different special teams coordinator would like to bring a different kicker in. So that could be a variable in that decision.
All right, and Furones, just to put a bow on this thing, a successful, from my standpoint, a successful 2022, and in 2023, I expect them to win a playoff game. You on 2022 and 2023, would you agree? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I'm with you. So you got into the playoffs this year. Now it's time to take the next step. Get in and then win one as well. You came very close in this one as a 7 seed versus a 2, which a 7 seed has never beaten a 2. 7 seeds have also only been around for 2 previous postseasons. But now get yourself in a better position where you're either a top wild card or where maybe you're competing right there with the Bills. We know they're going to have a good record, so it's going to take like 13, 14 wins in order to win the division, which is a challenge. So I don't know if you can get up to that point and then become one of the division winners and host a wild card game, but get yourself up where you're at least one of the top wild cards, and then maybe facing a weak division winner in the first round where you can go on the road and try to earn that first playoff victory since 2000. Since 2000, Perk. We're talking about more than 20 years here. These fans deserve it.
Yeah. I was on the beat at that time, so that's I guess that's good and bad, huh?
You didn't have to reveal your age, but
no, I didn't. I'm 24. I mean, what are you talking about? Come on, I was an infant. I was the best infant beat writer in America.
Yeah. Oh, you were younger than me then.
Right, exactly. Hey, folks, we enjoyed coming to you all season. That's your boy Furones. I'm your boy Perk. We'll be back in the off season periodically updating you on things, but we really enjoyed bringing you the Dolphins season, and we'll do it again in the off season. And I guess in probably a month or whatever it is, but we'll be back. We enjoyed it, and y'all be safe. We will see you later.